All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kyle Klein, and I am. Let's see. Well, let me go to my next slide here. Um, I am a director of digital learning at Twin Lakes School Corporation in Monticello, Indiana. It's up by Indiana Beach. So if you ever heard the good old commercials, there is more than corn in Indiana. Yes, there's Twin Lakes School Corporation. So I'm also a Google certified trainer. I'm a ViewSonic authorized trainer. I'm a member of the Indiana Connected Educators Board. There is the URL again for you. My background, this is, oh my goodness, I think my 24th year in education. I spent 13 years as a secondary math teacher, and then for the past 11, I've been a technology coach and a math coach for 5 of those years also. And so it's been a fun. It's been, every day is different. I love it because, especially now with AI, you never know what's going to pop up in my email, like, oh, try this, or go ahead and do this. So it's pretty fun. I love my job. It's a lot of fun. So one of the things that I love about my job is AI. And so we're going to talk here about how to do some prompting. And it says, it's titled Prompting with Gemini, but you can really use whatever LLM you prefer. So let's go ahead and get started here. So this is a fun little, chart that I like to share out about how long it took to get 1 million users. And so, as you look down, you think of like Netflix, you're like, wow, 3.5 years for 1 million users. Now we got to keep in mind, I'm not sure if that includes the DVDs, that they passed around and everything, all that fun stuff. But to get 1 million users, that's pretty amazing. It took 3.5 years for that. You have Kickstarter, Airbnb, a Twitter slash X. I still call it Twitter. Facebook took less time. Spotify, for our younger generation, that's probably why it didn't take very long. Same thing with Instagram. Chat GPT, 5 days to get 1 million users. I will definitely say I was not in those first 5 days because when I read about it coming out, and I was like, oh, it's another technology. It's the end of November of 2022. I'm like, I don't have a whole lot of time to look into this now. Well, when it got to Christmas time, I had a little time to kind of get my laptop out and start playing with it. I'm like, hmm, interesting. And so at that time, it wasn't even being talked about ChatGPT as being a use for education too much yet because it's barely a month old. And so then I went to a conference and the FETC conference in New Orleans that early February, and it was everywhere. Not as much as it is now, but it was everywhere. Like presentations, people were adjusting their presentations. They updated within 2 months to be able to kind of present on AI in the classroom and everything. And so I was pretty much amazed, and I was so excited. I came back to my school district, and every one of my schools that I did professional development for, we talked about this new thing called AI and how it's going to just be monumental for education. And of course, I got the looks of okay, sure. I also got these scared looks from teachers like, oh my gosh, it's coming for my job. It's not. Okay, it's not. Also got the looks from some people like, oh, all right, this is kind of cool. And so, I showed some of the things that how it worked, gave like a small demonstration. And since then, it's just, it's exploded. It's in so many more of our daily lives than it was even before. I had a great conversation with Jenna before we got on here about, AI is not really new. It is just new to the public, right? AI has actually been around since the 1940s, and Alan Turing had this Turing, they call it the Turing test, and so it's pretty neat reading about how AI has really been around for a real long time, but it just hasn't been available in a large language model, an LLM, that for the public, right? So 5 days, that's amazing to get 1 million users. All right, so let's keep going here. Let's see what's next. So here's a fun little tidbit from the Microsoft LinkedIn work trend survey they did. 2/3 of employers are looking for people that have AI skills, and 2/3 of them say they won't hire somebody without some sort of AI skills. And so now AI skills does not mean having to go home and vibe code a whole website or having to create, a magical presentation using Canva or something like that. Those may be some skills that some people are looking for, but that's not all of them. Honestly, the biggest AI skills that employers are looking for, they're looking for analyzation skills with AI. They're looking for being able to question AI, being able to double check it and fact check anything that comes from AI. Once again, Jen and I are talking about how, when I love vibe coding, but when coding came out and vibe coding came out, I bet there's a lot of angry coders. Well, coders didn't just go away. And what's happening now is coders have that special skill where they are being hired, being paid even more now with AI to go in and um, be able to see what if there's errors in codes and things like that. And so like Amazon had a huge deal where they had errors in code that was vibe coded. There's been other websites that have done it. So they're paying folks to try to fix these. Same thing as we talked about accountants. Okay, when the digital spreadsheet was created and Excel and Sheets was created, that didn't get rid of all the accountants. Okay. And what that did really is that helped accountants. Accountants were changed their skills a little bit more. They're more analytical. They're able to find errors. They're a problem solver. Same thing with teachers. Okay. AI is not going to get rid of teachers. We know that for sure. AI is wonderful for a lot of tools for teachers and students, but it still comes down to the people with the skills to be a good teacher. All right. So that's my little soapbox to get started here. I hope you enjoyed it. All right, so let's get into our prompt engineering here. So when I first started using ChatGPT, I kind of just put in a generic request of create a lesson plan for I think it was sixth grade math on multiplying decimals. And so its response was pretty general, and we'll show you this here shortly. And it gave me, a pretty decent outline, a skeleton lesson plan that I could pull some things from, and I could be like, oh yeah, this is a good idea, or no, I probably won't do this. But it also, it was pretty basic. It did not have my standards, or Indiana standards. It didn't have any kind of options that I wanted for my students that speak a different language. It didn't have anything for my students that might have some accommodations with my class. I did not include extra DOK questions. It did not include at station rotation. It did not include all these things that a good lesson plan includes now. Okay. So for example, I'm just going to hop over here to Gemini. So if I go into Gemini and you can see all my chats I've had so far, I've had quite a few of them, right? So, and a real important one is this Masters Field Parts. If you can't tell, I'm a golf fan. I got my Gopher shirt on today. This is my favorite week of the year, the Masters. So, I had to do a little fact checking with Gemini the other day. But when I actually went to ChatGPT first because Gemini was not born yet. But I'm going to show you here in Gemini, if I just said create a lesson plan on, we'll say the water cycle. Okay, very, very generic, very broad. Okay, this is going to spit out a pretty good idea with some objectives. Okay, we have some materials needed, gives me some grade level subjects, duration, it gives me a great visual. That's wonderful. So it talks about the 4 stages of the water cycle, gives me some vocabulary, even talks about an interactive activity. So that's nice because I didn't necessarily ask for that. Gives me an assessment and a wrap up. Okay, great. Pretty great, pretty basic. Problem is, we teach the water cycle in 8th grade. Okay. And we do talk about it in the 4th grade also, but I'm teaching 8th grade. I want to be talking about water cycle content that's 8th grade relevant, not 4th grade relevant. Also, my subject is 8th grade science. My class time is 65 minutes. So I would need to adjust these things. My lesson objectives, I want that to be written as I wills and we wills. Okay. So this has a pretty nice basic introduction. I'm like, okay, this is pretty cool. I think the next thing I ever did with ChatGPT was I worked on with my children. I went in and whoops, sorry, get me out of there. I tried out some of one of my own child's writing, and I put it in, and I wanted no, I actually had it write a story about my daughter who at that time was in third grade, and I had to make a funny story about my daughter Cody, and had said different things about her, and I showed her. She's like, "Dad, that's not a true story." I'm like, "Hey, AI said it was, right? So it's got to be true. It's on the internet." Um, but it that was probably like the second thing. But then I started getting more and more into it. I think one of the first things I really used it for school was actually with a sixth grade math teacher. I showed her. She was just amazed. She's like, "Wow, this AI is pretty cool." And she's like, "Well, I wonder like how could it help me with math?" And at the time, and still now, AI is not great with math. But what we talked about was how could we use it to create a performance task that would mimic a performance task that they have to do on that their students have to do on the iLearn test. And so we typed it in, gave it some information, gave it the standard, we gave it a bunch of details, and she's like, okay, yeah, this is pretty good, but let's change some of this. So we had to change some of the numbers and did decimals. We actually had the hot dog to hot dog bun ratio conversation for that as well. So, we had to make those adjustments. And then we probably had about 4 or 5 iterations, so we finally got it about where we wanted. But it was amazing. She didn't have to come up with everything. She didn't have to take hours to do it. She was able to do it pretty quick. So let's go back over here to our presentation. Um, that was pretty nice. And so I still felt like I could be better when I was doing my prompting, but I just wasn't sure what all to include. So last year, about this time, it might have been actually January of 25, I attended a Google. It was a Google Gemini for educators prompting session, and so you'll see like a lot of these slides will have Gemini on there, and they're like, "Hey, these are free to use," and I'm like, "These are gold. These are great." So what I noticed when I went to that was they talked about a parts prompting, PARTS, and we're going to talk about this. So we first start off with the P. P stands for persona, and then after that we have the act. Okay, so we have A for the act. Then we have R for recipient. We have T for theme and S for structure. And so this, I was like, okay, giving a structure, I'm a math person, I have a math mind. That makes sense to me. I'm going to try out the structure. So let's go through each of these pieces and we're going to look at how we can structure a good prompt so where we can get more of what we want on our first iteration instead of having to keep asking, no, add this, take out that. Oh, now I need to add this. And every time you're just you're waiting, you have more iterations, things like that. So let's look what persona is talking about. So persona, we're talking about what the role is of the person. You always want to give Gemini a role, okay? No matter what you're talking about. Even for my master's presentation, my master's question, I had them talk about they were the master's statistician, and then I asked for the question about like the most average amount of pars from 2021 to 2025 and all that fun stuff. So I still end up and gave it a role. In this case, a school case here, we have a couple different examples. So you are a superintendent of a K-12 school district. You're a first grade general education teacher. You're the admin assistant to the director of curriculum. If you are an Office fan, you might look at this. Every time I look at this, I always think of Dwight Schrute. He was the assistant to the general manager, not the assistant general manager. So I like this. You're the administrative assistant to the director of curriculum and instruction. You're a bilingual program coordinator. Okay. Persona, role. Let's go with P for persona. Next is the act. And this is what I really liked about this presentation was, oh, okay, it actually keeps in the gray italicized words, it keeps the persona. And so typically my first prompts were just a couple sentences, maybe a sentence. And so it's like, oh, all right. Well, here we're going to continue with the superintendent persona. Down here, we're going to talk about the first grade general education teacher. So the act that the superintendent wants is to write a draft of a back to school newsletter. The teacher would like to write a unit plan on the Common Core State Standard 1.NBT, understanding place value. Here's what I recommend to our teachers. Include, if you want a lesson plan, a unit plan, whatever, if you want the performance task, always include the Indiana standard. I could put in 4.m.2. Most of the time, Gemini or ChatGPT knows what 4.m.2 is, but I like to say you are a first grade general education teacher in Indiana, because then on the next line, when I talk about I want a standard for, or I want a unit plan for this standard, it's going to take the Indiana piece and it's going to say, oh, this standard applies only to Indiana teachers. So those are two big tidbits. I always say if you're going to include in a lesson plan, or if you're going to include in if you're going to include a lesson plan, unit plan, anything that you're going to create specifically, which most of our stuff is standards based anyway, put that standard in there. Okay, third is the recipient. So we have PAR, PARS. I love PARS, right? As a golfer. Once again, here's our example. So we have your superintendent, write it back, draft a back school newsletter. The recipients are parents and guardians. Okay. As a first grade teacher, you still want to put in who's the recipients. Well, this lesson is going to be for instructing first graders. I know that sometimes seems redundant, but maybe you're going to be running a professional development session later, and you're a first grade teacher. I want to write this unit plan, but it's going to be for my K-5 peers that are going to be joining me in a professional development session. So pretty handy there to include those recipients there. Next up is our theme. And sometimes you may use a theme, sometimes you may not. Whenever we talk about parts. Like I said, I'm a golfer. Sometimes I just go with pars. I don't always include a theme, but it's fun to include a theme if you're doing something specific with your prompt. So use a theme of fall for the newsletter. We're talking about ocean life and fish and these lessons for first grade. Include those as my theme. Okay, notice my final thing here is structure. Okay, I love bullet points because if I get a lesson plan, that may be pretty long. I want to ensure that lesson includes my most important part. So I always ask for it to be and bulleted, have headings, include bullets. I don't want to be just one big giant paragraph unless I'm requesting a paragraph, like some primary sources or anything like that. And I want a specific paragraph from a specific primary source. I like to use headings, bulleted lists, all of that for my structure. Okay. This is now a pretty extensive prompt that you have put in, and we can see what kind of response we get. This will be so much better instead of just saying, write a draft of a back to school newsletter for parents and guardians. Okay, well, AI is going to predict, it's going to guess, it's going to take all the data that anybody else has typed in, write a back to school newsletter, and it's going to kind of predict and give you a response. Okay, that's what LLMs do. They don't just know and think on their own. They're predicting, they're using statistical analysis to predict a response for you. So the more information you give it, the better the response is going to be. If you just go very bland and very basic with write a back to school newsletter with your audience, it's not going to be as good. Okay, but if you include all this other information, that's going to be so much better. So I'm going to hop out. I'm going to go back over here to Gemini. And I'm actually going to start a new chat is what I want to do here. So I'm going to start a new chat. And I'm going to say, you are a 6th grade math teacher. I'm going to use math because that's my background, but also I know the standards a little bit, so I know what I want. I'm going to say in Indiana. Okay. I want to write, or no, sorry. I'm going to create a station rotation activity with 5 stations. 3 of the stations must be must include using technology, and 2 should how do I want to say this? Be hands-on. Say hands-on. Okay. All right. So there is my P, there's my A, so my persona, and then we have what I wanted to create. Now let's do our recipients. Okay, so recipients. This will be for 6th grade math students. And I like to add a little bit more about the student. So these will be for 6th grade math students that have a basic knowledge of, oh, I forgot my standard. Oh my gosh. I'm going to say 6.rp.2. Okay, let me go back up here. Create a station rotation with 5 stations for the math standard. I can't believe I forgot that. Can't believe you let me forget that. 6rp.2. Okay, so then we have this, who this is for, our theme. Oh, let's see, 6th graders, they're into TikTok. So even though most of them aren't old enough to do it, make the theme related to TikTok, or I'll say, and Instagram. They love their social media. And we're going to say, how do we want this structured? Okay, so there's our theme. How do we want this structured? Create this in a table for each station. Include bulleted instructions. Oh gosh, I can't spell it right now. Instructions for the students. And let's see what we get. Okay, let's see what we get. So I'm going to go ahead and hit submit. Boom, here we go. All right. So here we're talking about, great. We're going to talk about how we're trending, talking about TikTok and everything. Talk about unit rates. So here's our station. All right, here's our stations. And it tells us what we have to do for station 1 is tech. Station 2 is hands-on. Tech, hands-on, tech. Now, here's the thing that you can do. You could export this to Sheets. The other thing you can do is you can actually, at the bottom of this prompt, if you go to these little 3 dots, anytime you see 3 dots, no matter where you're at in Google or wherever, click on them because there's always something fun hiding. I could export this to Google Docs. So if I export to Google Docs, we'll click on that. That will let you actually go in and edit anything that you want. Okay, notice how on the bottom here it says now new document created, open docs. So you can go in here to docs. This is going to open up our lesson plan. Everything is where you can go in and you can edit it as you see fit. All right, so just show you, there's your doc. But maybe I like most of this, but I don't like it all. So here's some pro tips. Here's what Gemini didn't do for a while, but now it is. Do you have any questions before we start the timer for rotation 1? I'm going to say yes. How long should, I'm going to say, actually, I don't want to say that. Yes, make each station able to be completed in 8 minutes. Okay, and I'm going to have it run again. I'm going to say okay. So it says here's an 8-minute speed task. So it might have adjusted a little bit from what we did before. So here we go. We could export to Sheets. We could, oh, there's a little cheat sheet. And I could even ask for a timer if I wanted to. So this is okay. This is not bad. But here is what I like about it. For me to create these 5 stations, it would have taken a while. Okay, especially based on this specific standard. And so it would have taken me longer to do this. And as a teacher, I'm like, I don't have time to create a station rotation. I love it. I love the theory of it. I don't have time to create these materials, right? So This does a pretty good job. There is something else we can do in Gemini that can make this even better. All right. So I'm actually going to copy this prompt. I'm going to start over. I'm going to go with a new chat. And they have some options here. So I could add some files. So if I wanted to upload files from like the 6RP2 standards, like the item specs or anything like that, I could upload this into here. If I have like an example problems, things like that, I can upload that into here. The thing that I love is I love the tools. And anytime I create something that is newer with like a lesson plan or something that I want to print out, I always click on Canvas. Okay. I want to click on Canvas. So I'm going to paste that same prompt in here and I'm going to click on submit. Now you could change your options. If you are signed in with a school account and you have Gemini open in your school district, then you can use the Pro, but I think you're only limited like 3 or 5 Pro uh, submissions a day. It's kind of boring, but Fast usually does a pretty good job. I could do thinking if I wanted to, but for today, I want to do Fast. And we'll see what happens here. So whenever you use Canvas, it actually knows how it just slides to the side. And it's going to turn this into more of a, it looks kind of like a Google Doc, like a basic Google Doc, but you can go in here and you can edit this straight within Gemini. So I don't have to export it yet over into um, Docs or anything. But here are 5 different stations. All right, here's my 5 different stations. Give some directions. What it says over here is I have formatted the rotation as a clear, easy to read table, specific student facing instructions. Here's what I love. It is now giving you these suggestions. So station 1 and 4, you could use tools like Sheets or Desmos for the technology portions. Station 4, you could use screenshots from the TikTok shop. Okay. It asks you, would you like to generate specific filter cards or the PR campaign word problems for the hands-on stations next? I'm going to say yes, please. I still like to use proper English. If I didn't like what it showed up, the other thing you can do is I could just type over here, try again. It's going to go back through that same prompt that I originally gave it, and it's going to drop it in here and recreate it. Okay. Let's see what we got here. Oh, okay. This looks nicer. Here's for station 2. I have the hands-on section. So it gave me my activity, created it for me for station 2. Station 4, remember, that is my other hands-on activity. So these I could create. All right. This is pretty amazing. I can create these. So pretty wonderful. I could keep going through here and asking, for more creations, things like that. You know what else I could do? I could say create. Maybe I could say like, we'll see if this works. Create the station for activity in a Google Slides. All right. So this is pretty cool. This is something that's a little newer in Gemini too. You can actually ask it to create Google Slides. Whether we'll do it for just Station 4, we'll see. I may have to change some things. So you don't have to use the parts prompting every single time you go in, but there's a lot of times that, I start off with my initial prompt, and then after that, I'm using my thinking brain here to go through and make any iterations I want. It is making slides. We'll see what happens here. If you want to go back to any other pieces, you can always go back, click on my hands-on stations. I can go back here, click on my I can't even talk right now, my lesson plan, my station rotation, it has them here. So it's going to be creating slides for my station 4. We'll see how these look. And okay, here we go. So we can slide through these, no pun intended. There's 13 slides it created. So we go through here, not too bad, tells me what to do. There's my cheat sheet. Here's my pack A. So it gives me some information, gives me some pretty cool visuals. All this I could export to Google Slides and edit if I want to. Okay. Amazing. I am getting so much work done here for this lesson that I'm not real sure about how in the world I was ever going to have a station rotation, right? So I could keep going through fun things like that. The other thing I want to show is if I go back up to our our first initial stations here, I can always print it. I can export it to docs this way. The other cool thing I can do is I can create a web page based on my stations. I can create an infographic. I can do a quiz. I can do flashcards. Now it's going to create something. I'm going to say web page. Okay. And what it's going to do is it's going to code a web page based on these stations. We'll see what it looks like. I've done this before with creating performance tasks for the iLearn, and then adding tabs, asking it to include tabs for each different task that students need to complete, and adding a check my answer button on those web pages also. It's pretty cool. The thing is, you don't get to just export it straight to like Google Classroom or Canvas or something like that. When you export it, you have to export the code into like a web browser. Sorry, not a web browser, a website. So I like to use Google Sites. So while this is coding, look at this. This is coming up with all these lines of code that I could never ever ever try to figure out myself. All these lines of codes. And so if I go over here to sites.google.com, let's see if I get this. Oh, goodness. Let's say dismiss. All right, we'll go into my sites. I should have typed in vibe coding, so I should have. So I've created some different ones, and I've just put them onto my vibe coding. Oh, there it is right there. So basically, when you get your website set up, we made like an animal habitat website for first graders, and the kids just drag and drop their animals into their habitat where they think their habitat is. So slowly thinking. Looks like I need to adjust this a little bit, but so then the kids can start dragging these around. If we go to the live version, this is something that a teacher could just share this link to the kids, and we can see if I do this here. Let me go here. Where does he live? I'm gonna say right there. So why is it not working? Of course, it's because I haven't published it. Once I publish it, then it would work. But they drag these. If it doesn't go to the right place, it automatically brings the animal back. Lots of cool things that you can do here with vibe coding. Let's go back to Gemini, see what we get. Here we go. All right, so this shows a preview. So here's a lesson overview. Your digital hub for social media manager. You have a technology, hands-on, technology, hands-on, technology. So I can click on these and it's going to take me to my different station. Look how gorgeous this looks. I mean, this is amazing. It says log into your designated website or app, give them data for three rising TikTok stars, use a digital calculator, find the unit rates. OMG. I mean, how cool is that, right? So I can find these. If it's not exactly what I want, I can type over here, change the color scheme to this, make it do something else. When I get my website how I want, I go to the share button, copy contents, and what that copies, all of these lines of text. And then I just go over to my website. I drop it into my website. Pretty amazing. Okay. Pretty amazing. Pretty cool. I love it. I love it. And you can do this in Gemini. I know Claude does a really nice job too. So I love being able to create with my prompting. All right. So I'm going to kind of go back here to like a new chat. And in Gemini, they have some other options. You can always, create images. You can go in here and you can create music. You can boost your day. You can help me learn. One thing that I have done is I have, let's see, I actually have I don't know if this will show this because I'm using kind of a green screen, but I use the Gemini app on my phone all the time. And sometimes I will just upload a photo. I remember using it out on the golf course one time with my dad. He's like, "Oh, I think that's a sugar something tree." And I was like, I don't know. So I took a picture of its leaves, asked Gemini, and it's like, what kind of tree it was. It said, "Looks like you're looking at a silver maple." And I'm like, I know it's not a silver maple. But I said, well, I think you need to try again. This is not a silver maple. So it analyzed the photo again. It's like, oh, yeah. Well, this is a sugar whatever tree that my dad said. I'm like, Okay, Dad, that's pretty amazing. You did a great job. So, um, I was impressed with my father. My father knew more than Gemini at that time. But I also like to use it for taking a photo of like a book if I'm at Barnes and Noble, and I'll take a picture of the front cover of a book, and I will ask it questions about that book that I may not be able to get from reading inside the flap. Okay, how long does it take? Somebody that reads it, however many words a minute. Um, you know, to get through the whole book. How long is each chapter? I could ask, is this going to be specific for my role as a digital learning coach? Is this better to help teachers that are in K-5 or 612? I take photos, upload to Gemini, and ask questions all the time. Um, and it's amazing. One of the other things that you can do with Gemini is there is a button down on the bottom. It's kind of hard to see. I hope you can see that in an image. Um, let's see. Let me see if it'll show up here. See if I showed up here. Okay, yeah, it does. Okay, there is. Oh, it was there. Over here on the side, there's like some lines that you can actually get in there. On the very far right, you can click it and you can have a conversation with Gemini without having to type. So sometimes I'll walk our dog at night and I will just start the conversation with Gemini and ask it questions. Okay, I need to help improve our SAT scores. What are some ways that I can work with our high school teachers to help prepare our students for the for the SAT? What are some strategies that work? I can ask it questions about where can I find practice problems. It'll create practice problems for me. Um, and I love that conversation piece because it is a co-planner with me. And in my role, I'm on a one man island. I'm like Tom Hanks and Wilson. I don't have a Wilson, but actually I take that back. Gemini is my Wilson. Okay, that's my companion. That's who I chat with to try to come up with solutions when I have stressed my brain and I can't think of something good. In my role, I'm K-5. My background is secondary, so it's for me to know exactly what a first grader is going to be learning about in reading, what with decodables and things like that. That's new to me, so I might ask Gemini for some help so I can work with a teacher that asked me for some help. Lots of cool ways. I love the images. I use a lot of post-it notes as well. I will take pictures of my post-it notes, upload them. It'll help me analyze and organize my to-do list. And so it will help me. It can ask me, I can have a conversation about my to-do list, what needs prioritized. It'll tell me when I should do it, things like that. I'm pretty good at that, so I don't really need to prioritize with Gemini, but that's just an example. Um, and it helps me just keep organized. Like I sometimes I'll write hand notes, sometimes I don't. I give a oh goodness, a keynote back in March about keeping the human element and AI. And so one of the things I did was I wrote a lot of notes, handwritten notes. Well, I also had some notes um, in my Google Keep, and I had notes in a document. So I uploaded all of those just by hitting that plus button, or by hitting this plus button right here to upload files into my Gemini. And then I was able to ask it questions. I was able to ask for, specific data. I was able to work back and forth. It would say, well, how about this outline? I'm like, I don't like this where this is at. I'm going to move it. We only have 45 minutes. It's hard to put all the things in my brain, whether they're good or bad. It's hard to put them in like one 45-minute section. So I use Gemini a ton for that. So, whew, I'm getting a little windy. Sorry about that. Okay, so let's go back over here to our parts prompting. That's how we originally started. Okay, so I went through the parts. Let me go through the persona, the act, the recipients, the theme, the structure, and here's like another breakdown of one. So we have our persona. You're an eighth grade history teacher. Your act. Here's my lesson plan to help my students achieve reading primary documents. My recipients, my eighth grade students, see here, this is where I like say they have some experience reading primary documents. They may have no experience. They may not know what a primary document is. Here's the theme. Here's the structure. Crazy. And then I put all that into a prompt. prompt that would have started really tiny with one sentence, maybe write a lesson plan to help my students achieve reading uh, primary documents. My prompt now is 5, 6, 7 sentences long. Um, it's pretty amazing what you can get and more specific that you are with your prompting, the better results you're going to have as well. So let's see. I want to go back over to Gemini. And if I start a new chat, I'm going to go into my tools. I'm going to say Canvas. So if we, one last time, if we put in our, what we had, whoops, I didn't mean to do that. Goodness, sorry. Where is my unit rate stations? Let me get my original, what I had. All right, here we go. So let me take this and I'm going to put it in a new chat. So here's what else I want. I'm not going to create a station rotation. What I want to do is I want to create a lesson plan. Create a lesson plan for Math RP2. Okay. I'm going to get rid of this. And here's what else I want in my lesson plan. So whenever I want a lesson plan, you always want to think about everything on an ideal world. What could you include in a lesson plan, right? So I'm just going to change everything that I want in my lesson plan. So I'm going to say write the objectives as we will and I will statements include the following. Okay, so here's the pieces that I want. I want a short bell ringer. I want, let's see, I want an interactive, collaborative activity. I want some direct instruction. Let's see, what else do we want? Well, I want resources for students that read at a 4th grade level. Let's see, comma. I want a station rotation. Provide a station rotation activity with 4 stations. And I can say include, let's see, I want an exit ticket. I want an exit ticket and 3 extension activities for my students that finish early. Now, I didn't say, whoops, that Finch, here we go. I knew I forgot something up here. When I create a lesson plan, I want to say how long my period is too. So I'm going to say create a 65-minute lesson plan. All right, so this, I want to include all these options. Here's my 6th grade students, create this in table. We'll say create this in table, include bulleted instructions. Okay, so I'm going to see what happens here. I'm going to hit fast. Oh, I want this to be in my canvas, remember, because I'm going to export this. So I'm going to say submit. It's going to slide over. It's like, okay, I have your 65-minute lesson plan. Let's see what happens. Oh, there's my we will, I will. Wonderful. Here's my lesson overview. As I go down, and I love the timestamps too. It'd be great if we could stick to those timestamps, right? Here's my bell ringer. Here's my direct instruction. A lot of times I could ask for direct instruction. I could ask for specific examples. Here's my interactive collaborative activity. I always like to ask for all these things because I can adjust the times. Maybe I don't have time for station rotation because it's the first time I'm really introducing this and I want more direct instruction. I can include resources for my 4th grade level readers. Here's my exit ticket. Here's some extension activities. Oh, perfect. I love it. Let's say I love it, okay? If I didn't, I could go over here and say, do you want me to generate specific STORAD cards or guide notes for the teacher's station? Yes, please. And it will continue creating. Whew, just mind-blowing. Like if I had this in the classroom when I was teaching, I would have spent less time planning or creating, I should say creating things, not less time planning. I'd spend less time creating items for my students than I would be giving them feedback. Because I'd be providing so much more feedback to my students because I wouldn't be spending so much time with having to create these resources. So I love this. I hope you love it. I am going to wrap it up there. If you have any other questions, feel free to reach out. I have some other options, some other things in here. We talked about different things with Gemini and everything. But if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. There's both my emails, my school, my personal. If you'd like to connect on Twitter/X, feel free.